How do you solve a problem like England? Is England even a problem that needs to be solved? How many changes would you make for this weekend against Australia? Would you ring the changes? Would you just make a couple of tweaks or just keep it as it is because you felt England played quite well and probably should have beaten New Zealand? All things I'm going to cover off on this video. I'll give you my thoughts. I'd love to know yours as well in the comments down below. Give the video a thumbs up and I would love it if I would earn your subscription. Now, one thing I got round to watching today was the post-match press conference from the weekend at Twickenham. And yeah, I was here on the channel making videos after the game, so I didn't see this. But Steve Borthwick and Jamie George, I think I've captured it with this little screenshot that I took. Have a look at the difference in the body language between the two of them. Jamie George just looked bereft. He looked gutted, seething. He was almost, you could see there was like anger bubbling under the surface. Totally understandable. Steve Borthwick, meanwhile, was smiling quite a bit, and he was trying to give an upbeat, positive spin on things. Although I think Steve Borthwick's eyes gave him away. I didn't believe the smiles. I thought he looked like, I think he was just as frustrated under the surface. But I understand it in a way because he's got to pick his England team back up and get them back on the horse to play against Australia, which now takes on a different level of significance. England, now they've lost to New Zealand, have to not only beat Australia, but they have to play well and set themselves up for South Africa in 2 weeks because they now have to go and beat South Africa. The success of England's November hinges now on South Africa. If they'd beaten New Zealand and then they go and beat Australia, I think the pressure's off against South Africa. They can lose to South Africa. Well, they're the world champions. No one's expecting them to win. And people still think that November was a success. But if you only win 2 games against Australia and Japan, failure. That's the pressure at this level. And I think that's why Steve Borthwick had the smile on his face and was trying to be positive, because he's got to motivate his guys to go out and deliver against Australia. There have been some changes to the squad. Joe Marler has retired from international rugby. Thank you, Joe, for a brilliant career and for just being an interesting, unusual, unique bloke as well as a fantastic rugby player. 95 caps, but he just felt, as much as he, I'm sure, would love to have gone on and become one of the Centurions, he's knocked it on the head. I fully expect Joe Marler to rock up on like I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, and loads of other shows like that in the next couple of years. So because he's a one-off. Thank you, Joe. His replacement, Asher Opoku-Fajor, part of the future of England, no doubt about that. But the future of England at loosehead prop? I'm not so sure about that. Interesting that Steve Borthwick seems to have replaced a loosehead prop with a tight head prop. That's where he plays for Sale Sharks. Yeah, he has played loosehead prop for England under 20s, but he's primarily a tight head prop. A very good player, mind you. So maybe he's just getting him around the camp for a bit of exposure. And he would call up Beno Abano if there was an injury to Finn Baxter, let's say. I would have liked to have seen Beno Abano in the squad. I think he deserves it as the next cab off the rank, but he's one of those faces that doesn't seem to fit with Steve Borthwick, which was and has been the case for Ted Hill. I'm assuming and hoping that Ted Hill is injured, and that's why he's now not in the squad. So I don't mean I wish he's injured. I'm not wishing Ted Hill to have an injury. My point is, at least that would explain why he's now not in the squad if it was an injury. Because I was just finally delighted that he was actually in the squad, but now he's not in it anymore. Yeah, I don't know. I think Ted Hill might end up being a Ben Earl or an Alex Mitchell. Overlooked for years, despite fans saying, pick this guy. And then eventually he gets his chance and shows why he should have been in the team all along. I think probably Ted Hill's just going to be the next one of those. It was, and you know what? It was Eddie Jones with Ben Earl. He just didn't really rate Ben Earl and didn't pick him. And then he got his chance eventually and looked amazing. And look at him now, England's best player. But Steve Borthwick has done that himself. Alex Mitchell being the prime example. Didn't pick him in the World Cup squad. An injury to Jack Van Poortvliet means Alex Mitchell gets on the plane, but it's probably only going to be the third choice scrum half. Ends up proving that he's the best of the lot of them, like loads of England fans were saying all along. And look at him now. And Ted Hill, I think, is going to be another one. At some point, he's going to get his opportunity. He's going to get picked. And then he's going to put in the sort of performances that we always knew he would do. But I guess we'll just have to wait. But Charlie Ewels is in. I mean, that makes sense, right? A blindside flanker out and a second row coming in. I don't get it. Unless... That's 5 locks England have got now. Unless I'm assuming that Steve Borthwick is thinking of George Martin as a possible blindside flanker if needed then. I don't get it. I might have gone for Tom Pearson, or more's the point, Tom Willis. He would have been the one that I picked. But there you go. Maybe Tom Willis is going to be another one of those players. At some point he'll get his chance and he'll show why he should have been in the mix all along. But Not at the moment, it seems. As for the actual team for the weekend, what would you change from the England team that played against New Zealand? There is the England team that played against New Zealand, and I have underlined and italicked players that I would consider changing. And as you can see, there's not many. Well, the whole bench and 2 players from the starting 15. I would keep things fairly... I'd keep them the same. I thought England played well against New Zealand. England should have won. They didn't manage the last 20 minutes very well. They seem to run out of energy a bit. And I think that's down to the defence that England have. It just saps so much energy out of them. That's why Steve Borthwick went for the 6-2 split. But ultimately, it didn't work. They should have won. They let it get away. They've got to start converting these narrow defeats into victories. So yeah, the whole bench I'd consider changing. And I've got Ben Spencer and Henry Slade that I would consider changing as well. As for the ones I would actually change, I would make a change at scrum half. Now, that seems like a surprise. Let me justify my call there, because Harry Randall did not have a great game when he came on. And I was heavily critical on the channel of his pass for that drop goal at the end. So why am I saying Harry Randall starts and Ben Spencer on the bench? I'm also not saying Ben Spencer had a bad game. He did not. I thought he played well. I'm not viewing starting as first choice and bench as second choice. That's one thing the world champions South Africa have shown us, is that it's a 23-man game and it shouldn't be thought as first choice, second choice, start, bench. You have a job to do in a specific role, and I just think Harry Randall with Marcus Smith is a better fit. England's attack did not get going. We looked quite good on those short forward runners and the little tip passes and stuff, and we got good change out of that. Marcus Smith did not have the options and the space and the time to get the ball to Tommy Freeman or Manny Faye-Waboso or George Furbank. It just didn't happen. England didn't fire real shots in attack. The only try we scored was from an interception. Harry Randall plays with the sort of tempo that Alex Mitchell plays with, and I think that would be better to start. And I think Ben Spencer could continue that if needed coming off the bench. Or he could have a slightly more controlling tactical game if that was needed off the bench as well. Also, scrum halves, you cannot play 80 minutes. There's a lot of people going, why did Ben Spencer come off? He should have stayed on. Scrum halves run like nobody's business, especially to play at the tempo that you play at. You can rarely, if ever, play 80 minutes as an international scrum half at the top level, which is why you need 2 good ones. So it could end up being 40 minutes and 40 minutes. And so that would be my choice. I just think Spencer and Ford or whoever, Randall and Smith, just feels like a better combo to me. So there you go. That's my thoughts. Tell me if you think I'm wrong. Henry Slade, I've got him there underlined, the other person in the starting 15 as a consideration to change. I actually wouldn't change him. I wouldn't make that change. Henry Slade was brilliant in the summer, and England, when they played, it was when they played against France and Ireland, wasn't it? And England's attack looked really good. Henry Slade was excellent. Yes, he only had 54 minutes of rugby coming into the game at the weekend against New Zealand. I thought he did quite well, and I think he'll be better for it, and he'll be good again for Australia. So, more's the point. I know there's the idea of moving Tommy Freeman inside to 13. He hasn't had a lot of time at that, and I just don't think that's a necessary thing that we need to do. So I personally wouldn't. As for the bench then, so that would be my starting 15 against Australia. Just one change at scrum half, because I just think the combinations work better. Other than that, I'd keep it the same. Do you agree, disagree? Let me know. Let's get on to the bench then, where I've said I would consider changing all 7. Firstly, I would still involve George Ford. I'll discuss the split on the bench in just a minute. But personally, I think I would still have George Ford. I think he's an outstanding player. And look, yeah, he didn't have a great game when he came on. And a lot of people have been saying, why did we take Smith off? I get that as well. Equally, when he came on, I remember thinking, good call. Someone to come on and calm things down and finish this game off, which is clearly what the plan was. It didn't work. But the guy is ace. And just think about a couple of alternative universes. One, Marcus Smith does stay on the entire 80 minutes against New Zealand and misses the drop goal. What does everyone do after the game? What's the point in having George Ford on the bench? You had to bring him on. He's a drop goal specialist. Another flip side scenario, George Ford gets a good pass from a good scrum at the drop goal to get the drop goal and scores the drop goal. And everyone says after the game, Steve Borthwick, you genius, bringing on your drop goal specialist finisher to win the game for England. So it's just one of those things. I still would persevere with George Ford. I think he's exceptional. As for the rest, let's get to the forwards then. I would go with a 5-3 split if I was going to have these guys involved. So I've dropped Alex Dombrandt, who I thought was ineffective and I didn't really understand the selection. And I would go Ollie Slightholme, someone who just has a bit of spark about him. And that means with Ollie Slightholme on the bench, you can move Tommy Freeman to 13. And that might be the way I go with it. Start with someone who's tried and tested and a class player. If you want to just kind of inject a little bit of spark, Slade can come off, Freeman can go to 13, Slightholme on the wing. That's the way I would approach it. And so, yeah, that would be the three backs in a 5-3 split. As for the forwards, I would probably stick with Ben Curry. But to be honest, I think I'd prefer Tom Willis or Tom Pearson or Ted Hill. Neither of them are involved, so none of them are involved. So there you go. I don't have that option. On that basis, I thought Ben Curry did enough at the weekend to justify his continued selection. As for second row, I'd probably change to Alex Coles if fit and available. Because Alex Coles can play at blindside flanker as well as second row, that would be my call. And as for the front row, Dan Baxter Cole, I'd probably... It's not that... Dan Cole has been one of our better scrummagers and someone reliable. So I'd prefer to give the credit to New Zealand rather than criticising Dan Cole individually, or even Finn Baxter for that matter, who'll be better for the experience. I just think Trevor Davison has been a rock for Northampton Saints, and so he might be a change that I would make on the bench. Just a thought. So my guess is that the comments will be full, and let me know if you agree, of people that would make far more changes than that. But that is my thought. I thought England actually played well. In most areas of the game were better than New Zealand. Just, I would give credit to New Zealand, but fell off in the last 20 minutes. And I think this combination gives us more versatility and more options. I thought the 6-2 split with two halfbacks on the bench did not work at all. If you did want to go for a 6-2 split, because you want the forward impact, then I'd probably bring Dombrandt back in, but I would go for Northmore on the bench and say you don't need George Ford on the bench in a 6-2 split. That makes sense to me because you've got fly half backup in the form of George Furbank or Henry Slade. So that would be what I would do. Let me know if you agree or disagree with that. We'll actually see when the team gets announced. I think it's Thursday this week the team is going to get announced for England. But so we've got a couple of days to mull that one over. Let me know what you think. Leave your comment down below. Give the video a thumbs up. I'll see you on the next one.